Story of Bessie Coleman by Lois Borden and Mary Kay Koger, illustrated by Teresa Flavin. Early years. 100 years ago in Waxahachie, Texas, Bessie Coleman walked 4 miles to her one-room schoolhouse and 4 miles home. Bessie loved numbers, and learning numbers was worth walking those long, dusty miles past tenant farms, cotton fields, and small, shabby houses. Bessie Coleman was a reader too. Twice a year, a library wagon stopped in front of her small home on Palmer Road. And twice a year, Bessie's mother, Susan Coleman, used her ironing money to rent books for Bessie to read. Books about people whose skin was the color of Bessie's. People like Harriet Tubman and Booker T. Washington. They were somebody, all right. Susan Coleman had been just 10 years old when the Civil War ended. The daughter of Georgia's slaves, she couldn't read or write, but she had a big heart and spoke with kind words. Susan knew how to plant seeds, pick cotton, and teach her children to love God. Bessie's father, George, who was part Indian, couldn't read or write either. The Colemans had 13 children, and Bessie was the 10th child born into this big family. 4 of the Coleman children died at early ages, even though Susan kept her strong faith in the Lord. When Bessie was 9 years old, her father left his family behind and headed for Oklahoma. Maybe tribal lands and customs would bring him a better life than a Texas cotton town. Now times in Waxahachie were even harder for Susan Coleman and the youngest children still at home. But Susan had her Bible. Every night, Bessie read out loud to her mother and her 3 little sisters, slowly, then faster, as she got better with the Lord's words. School was where Bessie wanted to be, not dragging a pick or sack through the cotton fields of Texas. But in August and September, when the green cotton bolls split open fluffy white, Bessie couldn't go to school. It was time to pick cotton. Some years, her school doors were shut until November or December. Cotton picking mattered more to the town than numbers in books. Every hand was needed, and poor folks like Coleman's heavy sacks of cotton meant food on the supper table. Many times at the end of those long days, Bessie stood next to the head foreman checking his numbers. She wanted to make sure that the cotton her family had picked was weighed fair and square. Susan Coleman had a proud smile when she saw her Bessie write down those numbers and figure out the sums. Someday that girl would be somebody. From the start, Bessie Coleman had always been a walker and a counter. Now, as she grew older, Bessie was a dreamer. On Saturdays, Bessie walked 5 miles across the streets of Waxahachie, taking clean shirts to the big houses of folks who had money. And Bessie walked 5 miles home to her sisters and her mom with another sack of laundry to wash and press. Maybe if she saved enough ironing money, she could get a better education beyond the skimpy 8 grades in that one-room schoolhouse. With more schooling, she could be somebody. Several years later, at the age of 18, Bessie took catch-up classes at a university in Oklahoma. The students there in Langston had dark skin too. Bessie was placed in the 6th grade, but the classes cost too much for a country girl. After only 1 term, Bessie had to come back home to the 3-room house on Palmer Road. Chicago years. Chicago had north, their jobs for all. Lots of folks from the south heard those words. Maybe Walter, an older brother, could help Bessie find a bigger life there. Walter was somebody. He had moved to Chicago years before when Bessie was little. Now Walter was a fine Pullman porter. It was Bessie's time to try again. She was 23 years old when she moved to Chicago. The year was 1915, a busy time for the big city up north. Chicago had tall buildings and trains and streetcars. The sidewalks were full of talk and news. Chicago had the wind of Lake Michigan and deep winter snows, and was miles away from the dirt floor cabin where Bessie had been born. In Chicago, you could be somebody. Now Bessie needed a job. There were many barbershops in South Chicago, and most of them had a manicurist. Bessie knew she could learn how to trim and file nails. It was a lot easier than picking cotton. If she were fast at it, she could make good money. And that's just what Bessie did. First, she worked in a shop on State Street. Then she moved to Duncan's barbershop on East 36th. When Bessie clipped and filed nails, she listened to Chicago baseball talk and the deep voices and stories of men. Big city life was new, and it was fun. Bessie was still a reader. Every day, she read the pages of the Chicago Defender, a newspaper for her people, published by Robert Abbott. Robert Abbott was somebody, and his work was news. Bessie wrote letters of her life in Chicago back to Texas. Soon, the rest of the Coleman family moved north to the big windy city. In the fall of 1919, Duncan's was abuzz with the stories of soldiers who had fought in the trenches of France. Bessie's brothers Walter and John had served in that war too. Now they were back in Chicago, home safe and sound from the battles of World War I. Bessie Coleman was a good listener. As she filed and buffed her customers' nails near the front window of the shop, Bessie heard tales of French women who could fly airplanes. John Coleman told Bessie, "Those French lady pilots, they are somebody."